Studio. Sorry, everybody. I was in the wrong studio, which is why I have this under my name, Bigfoot Outlaw in Training. So please keep that in mind as we go through the rest of the night. 2 minutes late, National Guard. Oh, man. I know I'm going to hear about this. So tonight, the original plan, we'll jump right to it, was figuring out about science if we're messing it up. And so I want to say hello to Amy and Griff being here. So what science, the definition is a method used in pursuit and application of knowledge and understanding of the natural and social world following a systemic methodology based on evidence. And there's a whole lot of different kinds of science. Hey, Cassie, how we doing? Everybody's slipping in. Hi, Mary. Thank you for your patience tonight. Leanne is here now. So I guess I should slow down and before I get too far into this and let people get in. Hello, our Awakenings Lives. How is everybody doing on a Friday night? First solo show, so there's going to be some goof ups. I apologize. So anyway, why I think science is kind of dropping the ball with us, so I can read these better, is if you think about it, you always hear about science leading the way. Oh, good to hear it. And then also, people tend to, I think, lean on science a little bit too much. You know, if science hasn't proven something, there's all kinds of topics that we'll get into. You know, the big thing is science relies on a certain amount of evidence, but depending on which science you has, that's a pretty broad spectrum as to what they'll take in, what's real, what's not real. You know, we can get into Bigfoot if you want to go that route. We have enough evidence in Bigfoot to prove him guilty in the court of law, but for some reason we don't have enough evidence to prove him to science. So it's almost like science is pretty subjective to what they want as far as what the outcome is, you know, and even when they have an outcome, you have to think about several things that they need to follow their own rules, even with as far as with if they do a study, then they need to have standards to what those studies should be. Because a good example right here is bro science. You know, real science is catching up to bro science because if you they didn't used to think lifting weights did anything. As a matter of fact, lifting weights was harmful and you'd get muscle bound and you couldn't move. And yet some of the most flexible martial artists, if you look at Jean-Claude Van Damme and Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee, look pretty tight in the abs and it looks like they move pretty well. So, but yet science was telling you at that time, don't do it. You lose it all. Now here we are 40 years later and all of the meatheads, especially when it comes to you start getting into your supplementation. I mean, the meatheads were experimenting on themselves 30 years ago with we'll go with PEDs, you know, performance enhancing stuff. And basically they were own guinea pigs. They were very careful guinea pigs because they were using minimum dosages. But science was saying it wouldn't work anyway because when these products were produced, they were originally for uh, human medicine to begin with, or animal. A lot of them were animal. You know, the trembolone or trembolone sandwiches, as they call them in the bodybuilding world, were originally made to make cattle hold weight. So The farmers would give the cows before they get on the rail cars, 200 or 300 milligrams for a 1,200 pound animal. And that would help them hold their muscle mass for a couple of weeks while they were on the rails. And bodybuilders being bodybuilders, figured a way out to make that work in their favor. So you got the bodybuilders now using these and making some serious muscle gains, which, by the way, disclaimer, do not do this. I'm not a doctor. I just know some supplements, but this is not medical advice. This is common sense. Don't use it. Okay. So bodybuilders get a hold of it and they start putting on tremendous amounts of muscle. But with that comes side effects. Science is saying it shouldn't work in the first place. They don't understand the mechanism back then. And yet bodybuilders are putting, 72 milligrams was the doses back then. And even then it was such a powerful substance that that's where the term roid rage comes from, is that substance alone. Yet science didn't understand it, and refused to do human studies on it for a long time. So you got guys recklessly using it. But now, 40 years later, science is coming out and saying, oh, yeah, well, you know what? It does work. There are side effects. But this was stuff the meatheads knew 40 years ago. Why did it take 40 years for science to take a look at it? And same thing with as far as fitness routines. This is a huge controversy right here. We could go all night on this one with me. Your sets, your reps, what's the best workout? What's your best diet? How many calories for this? How many grams of protein do you need to do this? And back in my day, muscle mags were your source of information because science wasn't taking a real hard look at it. Again, they weren't even for bodybuilding. It was hurtful to you. Your performance would suffer. But even the bodybuilding magazine, the gym bros were pretty confused on what works. You got Arnold Schwarzenegger, who built an incredible physique with 6 days a week, 2 gym sessions a day, 3 to 4 hours per gym session. And then you've got other guys who started coming around. The original name was Arthur Jones. He invented the whole Nautilus line of equipment. And he developed his own concept. He was a pretty intellectual guy because he actually created each piece of the Nautilus line was his design. He came up with his own workout plan where the person would only work out 45 minutes once every 2 or 3 days and did incredibly heavy weight. The magazine, yes, Joe Weider and the gang, Muscle Mag, let's shout them out. Bill Phillips, these guys all paved the way for science actually looking at bodybuilding and how it helps and where it's going to go. But they're still confused on what works best. And when the meatheads are all making these big physiques, I'll go from meathead to bodybuilder now because we're coming to the age of the meatheads are more scientific than half the scientists that are out there. And what's happening is there's a lot of confusion, and now science is looking at it where Arnold Schwarzenegger built his physique on 6 days a week, but then you got Mr. Olympias like Dorian Yates. I'm nowhere near that caliber, but my workout routine is very short, very infrequent, higher reps, higher intensity. Take every set to failure. 1 or 2 sets. You go in, you destroy it, you leave. Science now is looking at it and saying, you know what, that doesn't work, never has, and you should be doing between 12 to 15 reps with 3 reps in reserve. And so you're getting all this new science-based evidence that points to, they say, optimizing the physique. But what's more optimal? If I can build a physique in 3 days a week, 45 minutes per day, and look better than people that are doing it 5 days a week and they're an hour a day. Which one's more efficient, even if we got the same results? Science, the problem there is the fact that everything needs to be the same. You need to have your control. You need to have your other set that does higher reps. You need to do your next study that does the low reps, but the people need to be the same. Science is taking people that are untrained, have no clue how to work out, taking them in anywhere between the ages of, I've seen studies, it's usually females, males, elderly, and it's a mix of the group. And being that those people have never trained in their lives, I could pick, if you haven't trained, you can pick up a washer and do 20 reps and you're going to make some kind of sort of progress. Those newbie gains are there. Yeah, science is trying to say that because of, doing the lightweight, high reps, you get a more efficient gain, when even the study was failed because the sample sizes are too small. They're too varied. And then you get other science that comes out and does another study with other people who all of a sudden are backing up what the bodybuilders were saying 40 years ago. Yes, you can do this on 6 to 8 reps as long as you take it to no reps in reserve. And by reps in reserve, what I mean is how many reps you are getting close to failure. If you think you can do 3, you got 3 reps in the tank or 3 reps in the reserves. And then from there, though, all in the same magazine, you'll get the same stuff coming in, and they're completely opposite page to page. So your bro science is being more accurate because they're the ones in there hanging and banging and putting the iron through the paces and making progress, while their science is saying, well, you really don't need to do that because you don't need to take it that far. You can go somewhere between 60 and 85%. Okay, that's great if you're scientists and understand how to apply that, but where exactly is it? Everybody's different genetic wise. Some people have big biceps, some people have big triceps, some people have legs without even trying. And you're going to give me a pretty big range of 60 to 85%. Yeah, exactly, Amy. And it's funny because the one that whoever runs Mr. Olympia, that's the routine you hear about. They're the ones making the magazines all of a sudden. Uh, high volume, low intensity was huge. And then you get Mike Mentzer comes around, Dorian Yates comes around, and now you get high intensity, low volume, which is your 2 to 3 workout, but you go to you can't go anymore. Which to me, that's a whole lot easier, because I don't know where 65 and 95% is, but I can tell you what, if the area is in between 65 and 95%, if you go to 100, you just covered all your bases and you just saved yourself a whole lot of time trying to figure out what your 65 to 85% of your one max is. Go in, get the job done. So to me, bro science is way ahead there. Bodybuilders diet wise are the ones actually setting the scene for all the stuff coming out now about how many grams of protein you need. Bodybuilders were eating 2 grams of protein for a long time, found out they don't get, that's a little much, so they back it down to 1 gram of protein. Science is just like, well, just eat a balanced diet. But then the bodybuilders come along and you eat 1 gram of protein per pound and roughly 1.5 grams of carbs, and you gain muscle and lose fat. So now all of a sudden it's going to take science another 30 years to get on the board and figure out, yeah, you know what, these guys were right. So, and again, I don't know the difference between 0 and 90. I know 0 to 100. And to me, diet is very easy. It's not hard to figure out. Look in the mirror on the scale. Calories in, calories out. You don't need to get all, the macros are nice from the standpoint, it's like a gas engine. The higher quality fuel you put in it, the better it's going to run. That's the same thing your body does. All that food is fuel. It's just the quality and how you're going to feel. So, science is just now catching up to that too. It's calories in, calories out. If you're gaining weight, you're taking in too many calories. You're not starving to death, but that's the biggest one that gets me. Oh my gosh. I'm gaining weight because I have a slow metabolism. Like, no, you're gaining weight because you're eating too much food. Put the fork down. Step back. You can't gain weight on eating few calories. Look at there was a study of a guy who literally, under doctor supervision, starved himself, I believe it was for a year or a year and a half, and lost over 345 pounds. And it was a liquid diet, basically, with little to no calories and multivitamins to keep his body functioning. Now, if anybody should have been in starvation mode and been getting fat because he didn't have any calories, it would have been him. But no, he lost weight. So, how do we explain that? Yeah, I mean, I can't remember if it was a year or a year and a half, but it was pretty substantial. They showed pictures of him, and, by the time he was done, he'd look like he'd been a, you know, prisoner of war, we'll go with. So, anybody out there who says they got slow metabolism, that's why they can't lose weight, sorry, that's not it. What's causing it is you're taking in too many calories than you're burning. There are, let's backtrack. There are genetic anomalies. Some medications affect how you lose weight, but it just makes it a little more difficult. It doesn't stop the weight loss process. I don't care what kind of steroids you're on, whether you're on prednisone or something in the Hope's fluid or whatever. You just have to work harder and cut the calories back. Thyroid problems too, but again, it comes down to definitely exists. It just makes it a little harder, and you got to watch your calories a little closer or move a little more. So they do slow down your metabolism. I'll agree with that, but science is saying if you're taking in too few, you can gain weight, and that's just not the way it goes. And then Bigfoot. Let's circle around to the big guy for a little bit. How many prints, evident movies? Think of how many we got of that. Sightings, audio. Thousands of hours of audio. I'm sure if you added it all up, the footage. And yet science says it doesn't exist. I don't know what they're waiting on that one, because you've got your prints, you've got, supposed DNA, you've got unknown primate DNA. They've even come up with a scientific name for the prints, but they're not saying it's Bigfoot leaving the prints. It's, the North American wood ape or something like that. So why is science, playing around there? The other things, if you think about, science is more of something comes up and then they react. There's not a lot of proaction going on. If medicine wise, even problem wise, science wants to try to. It's running behind people. Some people are saying science is leading the way, but it's not leading. It's reacting instead of proacting, if you want to count that. And it depends on the type of science too. I mean, it's just so confusing when you try to rely on science as your only base of information, when there's just so much that science can't explain. And then all of a sudden, you come up with your quantum physics and stuff to try to patch the hole in what's in the science. And I understand there's a learning curve for all of us because nature is constantly changing things. All the rules of physics break down at the event horizon from the black hole. So there's holes in this. And with the bro science, you got people out in the woods having all these interactions, but science won't say yes. Why? Why is this a problem? You've got people who were doing psychics. There's a whole lot of them out there that are legit, know these things. And Justin put together that great presentation, Justin Decker, about how just now they're starting to look into it a little bit. When it's been around for hundreds of years, people have been claiming this. Obviously, they couldn't because you had the whole witch problem. You were playing with black magic, you were tuning with the devil. They didn't believe that that was a good thing in the eyes of the Lord. So psychics had to go into hiding. And now, they were the subjects of being tabloid. I mean, can you imagine being a legit psychic and the only press you're getting is from the National Enquirer or the Star magazine? Now, all of a sudden, though, there's just so much overwhelming stuff happening that science has to take a look at it. The public is demanding explanations, and now science is actually having to look at, just like UFOs. A great show earlier. Holy crap, was that good? And the entities and alien interactions and stuff being inserted in people that science can't explain. So if they can't explain it, they just look away until you get too many people knocking on your door, and then science is has to look at it. What narrative? There's a narrative being spinning. That's the problem with science, is it is so subjective and narrative driven. They want to prove that there's no life at the bottom of the ocean, so they send down whatever device, search for a week or two, and then nothing. So they say there's no life in the ocean. But then the problem is somebody catches an extinct fish. Hey, Joey, how you doing? And now scientists got to look and go, oh, well, I guess that's not extinct. Oh, maybe it was the last one, and then also they find a whole colony. So now science got proven wrong. And that's the funny thing when you start interlacing science and history. They don't go well together because history is written by the victors. And then all of a sudden science comes along with maybe this happened this way, not because, the Great Flood is one, Noah and the Ark. I do believe, I'm stuttering because I'm trying to think of how to do this without offending anybody, which is impossible these days. But now they're finding signs of the flood. Over in the Middle East, they're starting to find such where all this waterline damage is being found. Very, very high on the mountains, and there's no explanation for it. Other than they think that maybe now scientists say, well, yeah, there was a flood, but it was just a localized thing. It didn't happen worldwide because they haven't found the evidence. Well, they haven't found the evidence yet. It seems to me it's almost like the Bible just the Lord's letting us have a little bit at a time for science to finally find it and come together with it. Just like the whole, they didn't believe in Jesus, and all of a sudden they're finding all the proof of Jesus, and they didn't believe he was crucified, and then they turned around and find the ankle of a bone of somebody who was crucified with the spike still through the bone. So they have to, it really bothers science to have to admit they were wrong and have to change their stance on things. It takes some time. It's almost like it's a generational thing. Like, we're going to stand by the original JFK thing until everybody's gone, and then we're going to look at the JFK revisit it now that everybody's gone who could have been affected by the outcome, and they were the, you know, planners, if you will, of what happened back then. They're all gone, so they can't pay for it. Now we'll unrelease all the documents, and now science says, yeah, the bullet didn't go through 5 different things, so there was more than one person. Or that's just one example. Yeah, that was Amy. That's a good point. There's a whole lot of pressure on them, because science costs money, and the scientists aren't the one with the money. It's the governments who have it, and the governments who are funding the science. So if the science isn't going to prove what they want, why would science get the money? So they're getting billions of dollars just to push through and put answers out. And I think if they're serious scientists, what they're doing is, okay, we'll just put this out for now, and then we'll revisit this in a few months or a year or 2 years when everybody's forgot about it. Oh, that was our original study. Now we've got more conclusive evidence that the pandemic was not as critical as what we thought it would be. Yeah, and that's the sad part, Griff, is money does drive science. So it's how can we believe something that's just being driven by money? If I get enough money and maybe enough juice, I can get science to prove that I'm actually a smaller version of the Hulk. If I got, slip a guy a couple hundred million, Marvel, I can get more movie from Marvel rights saying that they're based off my character. But obviously, I don't have hundreds of millions, but just an example. Other things, money-driven electric vehicles, and then we have the famous lady who wanted to, when asked how to get electric vehicles over the ocean to get into Europe, we're just going to build a bridge to do that for the electric vehicles to ride on. That would be quite a train ride when in the middle of a hurricane or a monsoon. Maybe one of the extinct megalodons takes a chunk out of the support. Money is what's driving everything. It's sad. My narrative that I'll spin is, with the Bigfoot, science doesn't want to say yes because of the fact of how many different industries it affects. Look what we did for the one little wood owl. No more lumber in there. You're done. We're going to keep this little wood owl. And what would happen if you get 5,000 or 6,000 Bigfoot spread across the United States in the state parks? They're going to lose money because some people are going to freak out. I imagine you could probably even go as far as, unless you're signing some sort of waiver to begin with, if a Bigfoot gets somebody, can the park be sued because they knew about it and didn't disclose it? I know of a retired DNR person who worked on called Drummond Island. You can Google that up here in Lake Michigan, and saw 2 during their 25-year career, but they had to sign an NDA about it. And now that he's retired, I asked him, I says, hey, would you be willing to come forward? And he's like, absolutely not, because in that NDA is, I would lose all my benefits and my retirement as well. So in this case, money is burying what science should be proven, because we'd have so many more witnesses to be able to come forward. So where do we go? What do we believe in at this point? That's the thing. Money makes the world go around right now. And the scientists that do decide to be brave and step out are the ones who get chastised. And, look at Dr. Ketchum, all the I'll just say right out, look what the hell she's been put through. But at the same time, she's still willing to come out and come forward. And the way science gets away with the Bigfoot, I think, is the fact that there are so many people hoaxing. So not only do they lose money, but now they've got a reason why. Don't look into it because it's just a hoax. Somebody's out there in a pair of wooden shoes making these prints. They can't explain the fact that the shoes sink 3 inches into the dirt, so they must weigh 700 or 800 pounds. Oh, hey Lenny, how we doing? That's the other thing that people don't look at is all the evidence put together. Okay, there's a print. Well, what else is there a print about? How deep is it? What kind of terrain is it in? We got to work so hard to work around the hoaxers to get science to accept it, which sometimes I wonder why I even try. That's why I decided I am not going to be the guy who goes out, tries to prove Bigfoot is legit. Way better people than I are sitting at a much bigger table than me trying to do that. You've got Grizzly right up there. You got Robert Kreider, obviously Bob Gimlin put the big candle on the center of the altar, and all the other tremendous people who have taken nothing but guff for years, sitting at one table trying to prove Bigfoot's right. And then you got people like me and some other Bigfoot and training people that, we're sitting at the kids' table. We're sucking our thumbs waiting for the push-ups and the lollipops to come out while these guys are having an adult talk about Bigfoot. So sometimes it's nice if you can get a picture out there that people look at, but science just isn't listening, and either that or they're just ignoring us. And ignoring really irritates me. I'm more than happy to have a discussion about anything scientific. I mean, another good revision when the Titanic sank. Oh, it went down in one piece, but the witnesses were saying it broke in half. Nope, it went down in one piece. It was two. Remember the famous phrase, God couldn't sink her? Well, guess what? Maybe God didn't, but the iceberg did. And then 1986, they find it. Guess what? Two pieces, just like the people said. So all the scientific graphs and their mathematics were wrong. And I don't know how many of you, I like to deep dive Titanic. Well, not literally, because I'd wind up like that popsicle can, imploded. But like the deep dive Titanic, and the fact that the amount of damage that sank that boat is that if you take a magazine or a comic book, open it up, lay it on the floor, and put 11 of them in a square, that's how much damage was done to the Titanic. And it sank. That throws science for a loop, and then they had to turn around, and because they actually had the evidence showing the radar scan showing that minor amount of damage, now science actually had to prove why that amount of damage sank it when all their math in the first place said it was in one piece and it couldn't sink. So there's another case where science is also having to revamp things, but all the people who were on the ship, the witnesses, and took guff even at the conventions that were for them, the science would cut them off when they'd say, it broke in one piece. No, math said it didn't. So, and then they shuffle them off the stage. I mean, there was only one lady who was 6 months old when the Titanic sank that got to hear she was right. Everybody else had passed away. So imagine not only the traumatic event of living through that, but then all your life being told you're a liar and didn't break. That would bug me. I don't know about anybody else, but so again, science catching up. Science not admitted they were wrong. You know, they're, I think that one was more pride. There's really no money driven there. You know, the money driven part was in the movie that James Cameron actually got right. And I hate to admit, I went just to see if they did it right. So the reason I sat 3 hours was just to see the boat go. So what else is there? You get into astrology and astronomy. You know, there's no chance there's life outside of Earth. Well, now science is okay. There's a few more planets. Maybe there's a chance. It was a good love story, Amy, but I just went to see the boat sink. I did get hooked on it though, and glad Jack's actually okay in real life. But now they have to admit there's more planets, and then there's a few more planets. Well, guess what? With more planets, that shows there's better chance for more life. But then they try to narrow the parameters even more by saying you have to have water, you have to have this, and you have to have this to be life. What makes that necessary if it's an alien life form to have the same requirements we do? That's what we require for life. But what about some alien, gaseous planet that has some ghostly form that walks around, or spirit energy? Look at that. Look at the soul. There's still intelligent souls happening. The paranormal, that's another one science is still grinding on us about the fact that there being a soul. Exactly, Griff. It's human standards, but there's more to it. That'd be like saying because we can't breathe air, something's not alive when you got fish pulling the oxygen out of the water. It's and some fish live next to volcanoes that emit nothing but poison vapor from the volcano, and then that's what they live off of. So for science just to take it and say if it doesn't fit into this, it's not alive, is unfair, wrong. I do remember an experiment, and it happened one time, and I don't think anybody got to repeat it because it was on the morbid side. Was during the tuberculosis epidemic or pandemic. There was a scientist that wanted to prove that the humans had a soul. Well, soul being energy. So for that to happen, it has to have weight. Even atoms have weight. Your protons and neutrons, that's where you come up with your periodic table having weight. And so what this man would do would be he would go to the go to the tuberculosis homes where these people were waiting to pass over, and would ask. He designed a scale. It was to the tiniest ounce that and asked if he could go in, and when these people were about to pass, if he could put them on the table till they did pass, and then see if the weight changes, because that would be the soul leaving the body. And obviously, for obvious reasons, he got turned down home after home after home. And finally, one place did let him in. I'm going to push Justin on the presentations. Tonight I came into this blind. That's my fault. But Justin, I'm coming for you presentation-wise, so I'll be chasing you, and you're going to have to work to stay ahead of me. Anyway, This guy finally got home to let him in. And I think it was 32 people. I might be off on that. But were willing to let him put that patient on the table, the family, and then lay there to be scaled. And also, so it was a 24-hour watch. When that person took their last breath, the scale would actually detect it and move. It varied between 0.25 and 4 ounces. So he was proven in his experiment. At one point, they finally kicked him out. I believe it was in the 30s. And they kicked him out. He made his paper, presented it. They tried to say that it was the scale's fault, that when that person exhaled that last breath, that's what he was getting. So he got on the scale in front of the people, would exhale all the air out he could and it wouldn't budge. Inhale all the air he could and it didn't budge. They thought it was accounted for when people pass away. The body lets go of everything that's inside it, but obviously that would be contained on the table. And now, so that's accounted for. So he proved at that point that something would leave the body that weighed between 0.25 and 4 ounces. So what was it? And that's where he was professing it was the soul leaving the body. And because of the type of experiment, they did not let him do it again. And I don't think anybody's tried to repeat it just because of the fact that, hey, Victoria, just because of the fact, you're waiting for someone to pass away is kind of, especially with the family there, that's a private moment. And at what point does science fiction become science fact? I think it happens way sooner than what most people believe, because it seems awful weird that all of a sudden in the 60s, Star Trek's got warp drive. And here we are in 2024 we're on the verge of having a warp drive. So where did Star Trek get that term in the first place? Same thing with light speed. Star Wars is jumping the light speed. Now we're getting vehicles that can looking at traveling speed of light, lasers. In science fiction, you'll get. Of course, if you want to get really technical, like one of my clients does, who's airplane pilot, we'll sit there and watch the Star Wars movie and go, "That is so dumb." I'm like, it's like blasphemy. What do you mean dumb? She goes, "Yeah, you can't hear a laser in space. There's a vacuum. You can't hear nothing." Too techy. But so you've got that as an example. You've got black holes, which did not exist. Back when the movies were made, we had the two little cute robots with Maximilian. There weren't black holes. And then all of a sudden, science is finding. Thank you, Victoria. Science is finding the heat images around the edge of the black holes, how they're finding them. And they originally thought, there's one, how we're going to find one. Well, now they're finding out there's hundreds, if not thousands, of these things floating around. And it's kind of like a galactic lottery where we're lucky that pinball hasn't come close enough to affect us yet. And then they even find the gigantic black hole, which is at the center of the Milky Way galaxy. So their science fiction all of a sudden becomes science fact and beyond. The dark matter, dark energy, antimatter, all stuff that was can't happen. It blow up. Can't happen. Now we find that the universe is literally separated by like one molecule. There we go. of matter compared to antimatter, and if you get that other imbalance, then we get a big kaboom. So, antimatter actually does matter in the universe and the scale. Science catching up to science fiction. Or did they have the science back then and we're just now finding out about it? That's another thing. A lot of science is hidden from the public view. What do we actually know? You know, no, I agree there too, Griff. Science, you start getting into cloning people and uh, altering DNA for super soldiers and things like that. That's going a little too far. You know, um, but as I was saying about the fact that military science is way ahead of public science. I've got friends that tell me about technology that's still 15 years away that the military is putting into use now. I mean, look how long they had cell phones and touch screens before it hit the public hands with it. Everybody wanted that flip phone from Captain Kirk, and now look at us. We're even way beyond the flip phone. Captain Kirk would really be impressed. The little communicators, look at the little Bluetooth microphones now. So is science driving Hollywood, or is Hollywood driving science to recreate both? Yes, Griff's got it. Science is a study of what we do not know, trying to define what is around us. Thus, they don't know until they define it, which is perfect because before science started happening, it was all the fault of the gods or black magic or, witches in league with Lucifer. That's what we would blame certain things on. We didn't make the sacrifice, of little Susie today, so all of a sudden the volcano blew up, and now we got to do little Susie and Tommy got to go. So luckily we're beyond that, and little Susie and Tommy are safe now, and we understand that the volcano is reacting to a buildup of pressure underneath the earth. Hey, Beg, other questions we can get into? Yeah. Look at the Inquisitions to see what happens when science and religion meet. I'm surprised these two don't embrace each other because, to the best of my knowledge, uh, nothing biblically has been disproven yet. It seems like they always fall short of being able to disprove that it happened. It usually winds up are proving more of the literature in the Bible is true. Like I said about the Great Flood, it didn't happen. There's no way the whole world could be submerged. And now all of a sudden they've kind of given in a little bit because of the watermarks they're finding on top of mountains in the deserts. There's no way there should be, and trying to blame it on the flooding of a lake 1,000 miles away during some freak hurricane. So, and not so perfect Bigfoot show. Science wasn't science until someone proved it. So where does science start? Bro science. That's it's like I was talking about earlier. Hey, Twisted, how you doing? And it takes a whole lot of people to even get science to look at it. But if science doesn't want that to be true, then they're going to find it with a way to disprove it. Like I said, I can finish a workout in 45 minutes that will drop most people, including me. And yet science is going to say, how would you get better results if I did a lower intensity, higher frequency, so more time in the gym, higher weights and lower reps, or lower weights and higher reps, excuse me. And yet I'm a living guinea pig that the complete opposite is true. So even if the results were the same, Why? I got way too much on my plate. I don't have 6 hours a week to put into the gym if I can get it done in 2. I mean, wouldn't you like to have 6 more hours in your week? And that's just on the low end. Most people are there 5 days a week, 2.5 to 3 hours a day. And to me, if I'm there more than 45 minutes, I'm wasting time somewhere. I'm chatting. I'm taking too long a rest. Uh, that's weight routine. Now, let me clarify that. If I do cardio, then I add some time to it. Normally, I like to do cardio in the morning, though, before you wake up. Or not before you wake up, but after you wake up fasted, because then you can do about 20 minutes worth of cardio and get the same benefit as 30. Oh, I didn't know that. Griff, if you have the chance, go to the Ark exhibit in Kentucky. The presentations they're using science to prove the flood. I didn't know they had one. That would be interesting to see. And not so perfect Bigfoot true. True, not as long as people have conflict about it, others can set the narrative. And that's what they do. It's whose narrative wins, who's got the most money to put it. See, Amy? Now we learned a little something tonight, so my job's done. I can get off here knowing that I screwed up the intro, but at the same time, we did learn something toward the end of the evening together. And Twisted Flood is real. Too many cultural starting the same event. Yeah, exactly. I should count that. I would get more cardio in, Miss Victoria. My idea of cardio is running to the bathroom at 3 a.m. That happens if you get that, I'm close to 2 gallons of water. So, and that's another thing with science. I even tried my own little science experiment that I've talked about a little bit on different shows. So I may as well talk about it here as long as we're talking about science, because I doubt anybody's going to do this again. Uh, and I'll give you the whole story behind it. A friend of mine passed away. She was genuinely the most beautiful soul I've ever met, as far as people wise, you know. And she was a bodybuilder, an artist, amazing at both. And she always believed I had the genetics to do a bodybuilding show. That was long before that mileage and the injuries started to add up. So when she passed, I wanted to think of a way to honor her. So what I decided to do was take a realistic, not just a gut check, realistic look. And then I talked with a professional bodybuilder and nutritionist and physical therapist. And all of us decided after about a 4-hour conversation that, yeah, I can do this bodybuilding show. And where science comes into this is due to the fact, due to the fact that I take TRT or HRT, however you want to do it, testosterone replacement therapy or hormone replacement therapy. Technically, I'm enhanced. It's no longer natural. Anything exogenous, even if it only brings you up to the anything exogenous you inject, even if it only brings you to normal levels, you are considered enhanced. You are now a bionic man, and you need to do shows against other bionic men. So after long consideration with my health issues and stuff, I decided, well, I'm going to do what it takes. And with that, though, this is where the experiment part comes. As many of you know, I do look for Bigfoot and have had some lucky interactions, with made famous by peanut butter and Bigfoot poo in my fridge. What I am interested in, as far as the experiment goes, and I've actually documented now, as far as supplementation and frequency, body weight, all this is logged, is will it change the interaction I have with the Bigfoot that I believe are out in my area because I'm physically going to change. I'm going to alter. You know, hormones and pheromones are mixed depending on when hormones give off pheromones. They're not the same thing. You know, hormones can change your body level. Pheromones are just a scent. And my hormone levels are going to change. You know, there's going to be increased male hormones that will, of course, smell different. There'll be some other supplementation that, of course, will carry its own set of issues with aggressiveness and general attitude. So how's that going to change things? You know, how are these Bigfoot going to react now when I peak in about June? You know, are those pheromones going to cause different issues? So I don't know how many people are willing to literally alter the chemistry of my body and then turn around and go out into an unknown situation with a very unpredictable animal. And will they react the same? You know, or am I going to, instead of, sorry, reading chat, going to get love a long time, and that may very well occur. Well, I hope not, but I mean, anything's possible on the table. So the hormone levels, though, those will peak at a point as far as male aggressiveness and attitude and scent will all change. What's that going to do to them? Are they going to be able to see through it, realize this is the same guy who came out and had been giving them peanut butter and uh, little blue stones that have been disappearing as well lately? You know, are they going to do the same playful things with occasional knocks and whoops and good things like that? Or are they going to think there's somebody new in the neighborhood who smells awful aggressive and ready to go off? So are they going to go off on me because I'm some sort of, you know, new threat in the area for the, so we're going to log it all and see what happens. If it gets too bad, what will happen then is I'm not going to quit the show. I'll quit Bigfooting until this stage of my life is done in probably the end of 2025. I think it'll go okay. You know, I think there'll be some differences because once June hits, your supplementation changes and your attitude improves. Almost depression at point, because by the time you get to peak week, you're hungry. So, you know, your testosterone's crashed, your estrogen's going to be managed through supplementation. So definitely be more femme attitude than the hulking hitman attitude that can come with supplementation. And I saw a question that was a good one about see, the question was, how does it affect personality? So depending on how tolerant you are with certain supplements, it can drastically change your personality. You can go from, they basically make you more of who you are. So if somebody goes on these supplements, what can happen is they can go from being maybe they do have anger issues, but they control them. Their attitude's different. But what also can happen is you lose that control. Your fuse is there, but it's much shorter. So you can go off, you know, the typical, what they would call roid rage, in a split second. So it's something people have to be mindful of. It can cause depression. You know, it can cause your estrogen to go sky high if you don't manage it. And then all of a sudden you're depressed and don't know what to do. And So it's a very touch and go process, which the bro science has been doing for, decades and decades and decades. So they know how to counteract these things, to keep at least the outside looking good. The inside is where you got to watch your blood work and things like that. Your blood doesn't get too thick, or worry about clots or things like that, you know. But if you're a happy-go-lucky guy, these things can make you even happy, more go-lucky, and you get on Santa's extra uh, happy list. So maybe he brings you a free bottle or something. Let's see, more questions. Laws of attraction when trained. I'm not quite sure on that question, Victoria. Do you apply laws of attraction when trained? I apply go heavy or go home. If I don't have it that, I am not going to mess around. I'll save it. It just means I need a different rest day. And the reason I'm doing the show is to honor my friend. She thought I was capable of it, and I suck at art. So I can't draw. So the other form of art is bodybuilding when you think about it, which is most of the time I'm covered up. I know, here we go, but we'll leave this. I'm going to leave it alone there. It is funny though. Thank you. Stay covered up, because when you're bodybuilding, there's standards, and it's also very subjective. You are trying to look good for somebody else. That's in the end, and that's what it all comes down to. And then next week, I'm going to have somebody on with me, and we'll go into why that's so bad when people see people on TikTok and how that applies to that. Because when you see people a certain way, you're putting yourself out there to be judged by someone else. You might go out there, and I've seen it happen, and this is my biggest fear. Come in the best shape of my life. I'm lean. I'm big, confident, and I take last place because there were them people better than me. Even though I look fantastic, still get last. How am I going to take that, knowing that at my very best, I couldn't beat whoever else shows up for that stage? So that's the big fear. I'm not in it just to say, hey, I did this for Julie. I'm in it to win it for Julie. So we're about at that time. And anybody else have any questions other than why I'm going to do this? The Bigfoot part comes in purely as secondary from the bodybuilding show. So I just thought it would be a neat experiments that I don't think anybody's done. I know people have used pheromone chips, but I'll basically be eating pheromone dip. All right. Well, hopefully you had a little fun tonight. This will get better as I get better, I promise. And from coast to coast around the world, Kenny and I will see you tomorrow night on Stories for Bedtime.